many of you were here last year? A couple of you, but not everybody. So my name is Merryl Eaton, and I am the director of an advocacy and education project in New Haven. And for the purpose of this meeting, what I do is I make trouble. Since 4th grade. My boss says I'm making good trouble for God. And I'm hoping that you are interested in learning how to make good trouble, because I had a panic attack and I was afraid there was going to be nobody here. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah. Right, and so this is what is public policy and why does it matter? And before we go any further, I want to introduce leaders in Mothers and Others for Justice. This is Kim Hart and Holly Hackett. And I don't know, and so I will give them an opportunity to talk a little bit more later on, but we're going to get started. Okay? So I am going to repeat myself. If you were here last year, you heard me say that everything you care about is connected to public policy. And that is still a true statement. If you care about children, if you care about hospitals, if you care about roads, if you care about taxes, if you care about education, it's all connected to public policy. And how many of you have ever said there should be a law? We were having an outdoor meeting, and there were people driving up and down in very, very loud three-wheel vehicles. And everybody said, isn't there a law? And that's where this gets started. So, and if you're not familiar with the process, it can be pretty scary. But it doesn't have to be. Our elected officials work for us. And all too often, people think if they vote, they've done everything they need to do. And that is really, really not true. And what happens when you don't have a voice, when you don't get involved? Somebody else might come along and tell them what they think, and that might not be what you think. And I will tell you that I was willing to make phone calls this year for a wonderful Connecticut organization called Connecticut Against Gun Violence. So the bill was about safe gun storage. How could you not be in favor of safe gun storage? And, so I was making phone calls, but I checked on the website at our Connecticut General Assembly. 1,000 people had already written in to say they did not want this bill to pass. We live in a little state. 1,000 people didn't want that bill to pass. Your voice is so very, very important. Another example. So we have a Senator, Gary Winfield, who is a very, very popular and influential legislator that we have a very good relationship with. And we had a bill to cap the rent. Any of you concerned about the lack of affordable housing? Right? And, one of the things that we were seeing was that landlords were so greedy, were raising rents so very, very high. And so there was a bill that capped the rent. And Senator Winfield told us he did not hear from a single person who was in favor of the bill. He just heard from all the landlords that didn't want that bill to pass. And so I am hoping that you are here because you either want to deepen your experience, your understanding of how this works, or maybe even that you're a beginner and you're ready to learn the ABCs. So let's get started. I also want to review that one of the things that's important to know is what level of government do you need to impact? And sometimes it's all three. But if you're having a problem with a broken sidewalk, where are you going to go? City Council, right. You're not going to call the governor. So you have local government, you have state government, and you have your federal government. And most of Mothers and Others for Justice work has historically been on a state level. And because every state works differently, we're really not going to be able to get into too many details. But, you know, it's... So how many of you have been to your state capital? Wonderful. And I hope everybody will. This is your house. Your General Assembly is your house. And most of the buildings are beautiful and impressive, and for too many of us, they are scary places. For all too long, too many of them were filled with old white men. Thankfully, that's changing. And when you go up there, there's lots of people, you know, with long titles and professional initials after their name. But really what impacts elected officials is your story. It's your story, and Lisa, I can tell you, and we've been doing this for so long. You get up there, and they're playing with they're playing Wordle on their phone, or their aide has brought in a sandwich, or they're trying not to fall asleep. But when you get up there and share your story, they put down the phone, they stop eating, and they listen. So let's talk about what that looks like. So. Not everybody has a whole lot of time, but if you have 5 minutes, you can make a difference. Advocacy doesn't have to take a lot of time, and it really does not need to cost anything. So here are some quick ways to advocate in your everyday life. Call your legislator. If you live and vote in their district, be sure to say so. And that's very important. You know what? If you don't live there, when you call, at least in Connecticut, they want to know your address. They don't care about you if you can't vote for them, unless they're committee chair, and then they should. And you don't need a bill number, and you don't need to be a policy expert. You're already an expert in your own experience. Tell them what concerns you, what you read that you can't get out of your mind, your latest great idea, whatever. And if there's a bill, definitely call them. They'll want to hear from you, and they have staff hired to respond to you. So I will tell you, just 2 days ago, I called all my elected officials about something, and you don't need to talk. First of all, you don't even need to talk to a live person. I say to people, if you've never done this before and you're scared, call in the middle of the night. They all have answering machines, and that's just as effective. Or, you know, also, and build relationships with the staff members. Sometimes those staff members have been there far longer than the elected officials. Sometimes they have great connections, and they'll remember you. It is so unusual to have real people with real stories in the halls of the Capitol that they do. I mean, and these ladies can tell you, they have personal relationships. We have our elected officials on our speed dials, and they will respond and they will listen to you. Join an advocacy organization. So attend meetings where you can find out about current events and learn where your advocacy is needed. Join their mailing list, as well as to get action alerts and legislative updates and newsletters. Action alerts. This is a little bit more sophisticated, but I will tell you that one of my aspirational goals is that when an important bill comes up, and this is a little bit in the weeds, you know, I want to build email lists of people who care about the same issues I do so that I can get the word out so we can impact that bill, so we can get that bill passed.
So I just wanted to let you know, if you have a fear of calling, a lot of times any of these advocacy organizations will have action alerts that give you phone scripts. So you don't even have to worry about what to say. It's right there for you. So if that's your first time going into a call to your legislator, look for those action alerts because they do have phone scripts and call scripts if you're worried or nervous about your first call, if you want to try it in person. So you could always count on those as well.
Thank you, Holly. But do add your own words. Some of the more sophisticated legislators have hardware that when scripts come in, they kind of bundle them together. And so if you can add just a line or two that you know why it's personal to you, that will stand out. And we've even used, I've even sent odd-shaped envelopes. And I hope we'll be able to talk about some of the campaigns we've done to try and get very, very successful ways of getting legislators' attention. Inform somebody. Share your concerns with a friend, family member, even someone standing next to you in line. I got somebody to come to my meeting because I had a huge tray of fried chicken, and he said, "Wherever you're going, I'm going." I said, "Do you care about the lack of affordable housing?" He said, "Yes," and he came to the meeting. So it's a small world, and you never know who you're talking to. And your elected officials are your neighbors, particularly on a local level. And, as far as I'm concerned, once you run for office, you are now public domain. So whether I catch you squeezing the Charmin in the supermarket or Roland Lamar coming out of the bathroom at Shake Shack, you're fair game. So don't be afraid to be polite, but be out there. Use social media. Use your accounts to make some noise, tell your story, why you're concerned, why you support a bill, share ideas or thoughts about needed changes. I'm not so good with the social media, but it's out there, and it is a very, very powerful tool.
I will tell you that one of our senators is extremely active on what used to be Twitter, is now X, and he got so much pressure through X that he changed his standing and he changed his vote because he saw all of the different tweets. So he is very active on social media, and he takes what he sees very seriously. So you really do make an impact with a lot of your legislators.
Right, and when I had an experience where somebody I knew decided to run for public office on a state level, and she had a PhD in chemistry, and she was not happy with what was happening in the school system. So what did she know? She knew chemistry, and she knew about the schools. What didn't she know? Everything else. They need to be informed, and who's informing them? Well, unfortunately, the lobbyists are informing them, but they need you to tell it to them. I have seen at the last days of the session at the Connecticut General Assembly, they are voting on hundreds and hundreds of bills. I've always wanted to have a pajama party, bring the kids with their sleeping bags and really be there into the early hours of the morning. But I have seen legislators say to their aides, "Bring me everything we've gotten on this issue. Bring me the emails, bring me the letters, bring me the phone calls," and have decided how they're going to vote based on how much input they've had from the public. Please learn to be a voice. It really does impact things. Write a letter to a policymaker. Writing down your concerns might take more than 5 minutes, but it's worth doing. And with phone calls, policymakers expect to receive letters and emails, and they often rely on them for information. You're also likely to get a response, explaining the issue more fully, asking more about it, and letting you know what they intend to do. So I have a condo that my daughter lives in North Carolina, and I was never, ever happy with what the legislators were doing there. And I called, and I emailed, and I wrote, and they never, ever voted the way I wanted them to vote on safe gun laws. Well, I will tell you, when Senator Richard Burr decided he was not going to run again, this man who was staunchly against safe gun laws, reached out to our state senator, Chris Murphy, who's wonderful on gun legislation, and joined his campaign. It's a sad story because it was about the money. You know, you might want to become familiar. If gun violence is your issue, you might want to follow the money and see who's taking money from the NRA. I will tell you that Mitt Romney got $50 million from the NRA. Don't you think that's going to influence how they vote? So be a voice. Visit a policymaker. Surprisingly, visiting a legislator can take less than 5 minutes. When they're up for election, they knock on your door. Greet them, talk to them. When they come out of the grocery store, don't run away. Take a minute to stop by and ask them what they would do about your issue if they got elected. In my particular district, when I knew that we were having an election, I went and reached out to the person running, Josh Elliott, and I built a relationship with him, and I am going to a party at his house next week where he will have other influential legislators. Build relationships. Vote. I hope I don't have to tell this group this. It is extremely important for those who can to vote. It is shocking how few people turn out to vote. Just shocking. Kim, you've been working in the polls for...
And this we had our primary for the mayor in the city of New Haven, and so it was just 2 on the ballot. And in the district where I worked, Ward 19, it was 3,331 people who were eligible to vote at that primary on that day. Only 353 people voted. It's sad because you know why? Because they don't think that they think that their vote doesn't matter, and it does.
So coalitions, collaborations and coalitions, working with like-minded people. How many of you are part of a coalition? Very, very important for many different reasons. First of all, coalitions broaden your ability to impact an issue. Sometimes they bring together unlikely partners. So right now, Mothers and Others for Justice is working on something called the benefit cliff. I didn't even know what a benefit cliff was. And now it's really what keeps me up at night. A benefit cliff is when your household income goes up and you get any sort of, what's the word? So if the household income comes up and you get any sort of benefits, so that could be a housing voucher, it could be food stamps, it could be help with your energy, it could be insurance. Your benefits are pulled away disproportionately. And we are seeing this more and more and more, particularly when housing costs, you're going to hear, housing costs are so high, our young people cannot leave their mothers' homes or their grandmothers' homes. And so we want to ease the benefit cliff.
And so what that really means, I'm gonna give you my story. My 21-year-old son, and I hope I didn't tell this story last year, but anyway, my 21-year-old son, who lives home with me, he tried college, it didn't work out, so he got a job. Now I'm on Section 8, right? So I'm getting help with my rent, and I receive SNAP, and I receive medical, all that stuff, right? When my son got his job, he lost his state health insurance because he was over income for that. They took us completely, I mean, they just didn't slow the SNAP benefits down. They stopped them completely. As soon as I reported his income, my income hasn't changed, not one. I'm on Social Security. I get a set amount of money every month. But every time this boy gets a raise or whatever, they know. I don't know why they want us to report it, because they can already look in the computer and see it, right? You know, but they want us to report it. But anyway, I would love to get a part-time job, right? You know, to keep me busy, you know, because I'm at home and stuff, you know. And plus to get a little extra money, I can't. You know why? Because then I get kicked off of medical, and then I get kicked off of Section 8, because then that put the household over income. How is my son supposed to save to get the hell out of my house? He can't. He can't, because you know why? Because it's because of his income that the rent has went up so much more. Yeah. So That's about the benefits, Cliff. So all of what we are asking is that we keep our paychecks, we keep our food stamps, our SNAP benefits, we keep our housing without anything going up, down, you know, it can go down, but without anything going up, you know, and I'm advocating for at least two years. If you let me keep all my benefits and the money I'm making on the outside, I can become self-sufficient and won't need the state anymore. You know, but they don't want that. Why? Because they got us under their thumb, and that's where they want to keep us. But we're saying no. I don't want to have to be on Section 8 for the rest of my life. I don't want to create generational Section 8. And that's exactly what happens.
So we had an increasing awareness that this benefit cliff was impacting members of Mothers and Others for Justice. So if it was impacting members of Mothers and Others for Justice, who else was it impacting? And so we started to think about coalition building. And one of the things that happened is we found out that there was a Republican senator who was very interested in this. That had never happened. You know, in our General Assembly, there's like, it used to be a line, you know, the Dems were on one side, the Republicans were on the other side. Now there's a wall, unfortunately, but that's a reflection of what's going on. And this particular legislator approached the benefit cliff with a different perspective. What he was saying was that it was stopping people from getting jobs, which is true. You know, every Walmart, every Burger King has a help wanted sign because people can't afford to take those jobs. They don't make enough money, and they end up losing their benefits. And so we now have a legislative champion that is, you know, helping us move that forward. And our coalition is, you know, of people interested is becoming much, much more diverse, much more inclusive. And this is not a budget year at our Capitol, but we are very, very optimistic that we will get some movement on this bill. And I also, because this is a good time to talk about it, I want to talk about some of the things that we have done to get legislators' attention. So our legislature will be opening in February, and we will be there with bags of candy and a postcard about the benefit cliff in that bag of candy, and we will be putting it in every legislator's mailbox. And that is available to everybody. You know, you don't have to know them. So we have a postcard, and we had a volunteer address every one of those postcards to our elected officials, and that was one way that we will get their attention. This is true in Connecticut. I think it might be true in other places. We have always reserved wall space at the Capitol in the most prominent place that everybody goes in the Capitol. So where do you think that is? Where's everybody going to go? To lunch. So right outside the cafeteria, we have 25 feet of wall space reserved to get our message out. And it is, it costs almost nothing. Yes? Yep. Yes. But there are bathrooms all over the Capitol, but there's only one cafeteria. And so far in advance, and it doesn't cost us anything, we reserve that wall space. And it is so gratifying to see legislators taking pictures of our wall space. So again, we don't even have to be there, and we still can get the word out. So working with collaborations and coalitions. Holly, would you like to take over for a little while?
So finding like-minded groups can be as simple as Google searching. You can search the internet for advocacy groups and focused on your issue. You can check for groups on college campuses. Watching who speaks at public hearings, meetings, or panels, which, if you already watch your legislative processes on we have our government channel, it's like GoTV. I don't know what you guys have here, but if you watch other public hearings, you can find out what other groups are doing the same legislative actions that you are. So that's a good way to do it. Once you find a group, go to a few of the meetings, read their materials, and decide if it's a good fit for you. You have to consider a few things, though. Their mission and goals. Do they include your issue? Can you support the other issues they include? What you'll be expected to contribute, because some groups do have an entrance fee or a membership fee. Some will ask for nothing. Oh, I already said that. And some may ask for access to your network if you have one, or if they want you to volunteer. See, what we've come up across sometimes is you have to check out the history of the group. See if they have a history of successful advocacy, their reputation. Check around, talk to your legislators, talk to other advocacy groups. Do they have a good reputation? You don't want to align yourself with advocacy groups who, if you're not one to do more outward, somewhat violent, in my opinion, I don't do that. I like peaceful protests. So if you don't want that, you got to make sure that that advocacy group is aligned with your standards. So just make sure that you do that. You have to do your research. You can't just join any group. And what we do with where I used to work is we also checked who gave them money, because I don't want some entity that I don't approve of paying your bill and telling you, no, you have to do this, like a gun lobbyist or the NRA. Just because you advocate for it doesn't mean you're going to go forward and do so when it comes time to vote. Who else belongs to this advocacy group? Are you sure you're comfortable with all the partners? Just don't rule out certain groups because of their unlikely members. Some unlikely partners, like Merrill said, our Republican champion, can be a significant strength. Is one group or person driving the agenda? So is it a democratic process? Or do they just have one person setting the agenda each time? That's something you want to take into consideration. If so, are you okay with not having a democratic process? Some coalitions are aligned with one party or even one wing of one party, and that is not necessarily a bad thing, but be sure that you're comfortable with their biases and limits. So I think this is something that we all are having trouble with these days. Well, probably not most of us in these rooms, but recognize and respect each other's differences. While coalitions can be extremely effective, we're all only human. Power struggles, turf battles, and strong personalities are not uncommon. Keep in mind, there can be differences in culture, ways of working, resources, and levels of commitment to the cause, but differences can be a strength. So one of the most important things you have to do before you just jump out there and do legislative advocacy is you should learn about the history and the culture of the very broken systems and the way we want to influence them. Too often, a group of advocates work years to get a bill passed. So if you don't get your bill passed in the first year, it's okay. In fact, it's usually normal that it's 2 to 3 years. Your first year, just put under your belt that it's for educational purposes so that you get your word heard, your legislators know your voice, they know your topic, they know what you want changed. And
can I just give an example of that? For years we were trying to pass the Family Leave Act. Where if say I'm pregnant or I'm getting ready to have a baby, and my husband works for whoever, he can take time off to be with me and get paid for it at the same time, And I thought that was so cool. Who would say no to that? Well, they did. I wasn't with them, but I watched them very closely because every single legislative session, they were back up at the Capitol, and they had more and more people with them until finally, it went into law, right? And you know what? I'm reminded of the story about the judge, and the widow kept going to him. No. But she didn't get discouraged. She kept going to him, judge, until finally the judge said, you know what, give this woman whatever she wants so she can leave me alone. And that's how advocacy is. We have to stay in their ear. We have to write them, talk to them, call them, even when they are home, even when they're not in session. Hey, how you doing? This is Kim. I just want to remind you that this legislative session now, we still going to, do this, right? Don't let them, and don't be, like Merrill said, like Holly said, don't be afraid. Because, see, this is my life. This is our lives that they are talking about. This is our lives. And if we don't say nothing, they're not going to know. And if they don't know, then they're going to do whatever they want to do, right? And say that again. That's right. That's right. That's right. Everyone here, they can't be held accountable, right? Because, right. We didn't speak up. All right, I'm sorry. I just seem to go off on a tangent.
don't ever apologize, Kim. But like Kim said, so if it doesn't work, just keep pushing. So a lot of times it's because of the money, and we all know this because it's the money, always the money, always the money. So you go back and you talk to the agency or another agency to see if they can get a pass-through. That's what we do. We go to different committees, we go to different parts, and see what they can do to help us out. I think civic engagement is similar, but legislative advocacy and coalition building is a little bit different because you're definitely going to do this with the vision of going towards going to the Capitol and getting a bill passed or getting legislation passed. I think civic is different in that regard. Am I wrong? It could, but it's more broad. Right. Civic engagement is more broad.
It works from the bottom up.
Right.
And it tries to get changes for a community.
Yes.
That is way out of the radar of the legislature.
Correct.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
that's-
civic engagement can be going to your child's parent-teacher organization. You know, it could be very, very intimate. It could be very, very local. It can be, you know, sitting on a local committee as opposed to pushing for legislative change. But yes, you know, I mean, the foundation is, and one of the things that we're very, committed to is promoting civic engagement.
Thank you, Merrill. See, I don't always figure things out like that. I just do.
I used to always make it a component of the class.
Yes. No.
Just learn, go out there and make a difference.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yep. And what I like to do personally, because I have good relationships with, like Merrill said in the beginning of this, I have good relationships with all the legislators who are good trouble, and they really do live up to their names. So I contact them, and if you build a rapport with these kinds of legislators, they will be open and honest with you and frank and tell you, these are the conversations that they're having, and this is what you need to change in order to get them to move the needle to vote yes or no. So, you know, that's...
And I would just like to say too, I mean, it's good to reach across the aisle also. You know, I mean, if say I want safe gun storage, and of course, you know, everybody the Democrats are for it, right? I mean, let's just be honest. You know, we're for all this stuff. But see, but it's the other side of the aisle. Those are the ones we got to talk to. You know, because we got to convince, we got to first find out why are you so dead set against this? I don't understand. Safe gun storage? Why? And then I can hear their side of the story. And then I can take a break from there, right? Go home, come up with a counter.
Yep.
And then, I don't do the same day, not the same meeting. Come up with a counter. And then come back and say, this is why your argument is full of it, right? And how it's not going to fly, right? Yeah, so I just wanted to say that, you know, we have to, yeah.
I'd say you need to be exactly what Kim said and listen to their arguments as to why they say no, and go home and craft your yes, your reason for the yes. And although it's much more exhausting, I'm sure, it would be more of a reason to be even more engaged. That's how I would see it. You would have to be more engaged in order to move the needle any. You know, and like this coalition here, everybody here that comes to every conference, I'm sure you can get all of us to have the power behind you to show up with you, and whether that's just in spirit or in testimonies, whatever you need, you just call us. That's what I'm saying. This is all a part of our power building. So a lot of times when we talk to our legislators, they're very, very busy. They don't have to get it. They don't have to get our passion. They don't have to get what all of our everything means. They just have to vote yes. We care very deeply about our causes, but that doesn't mean that everybody else will, you know. Legislators are very busy. They have hundreds of bills each session, and they just need to vote yes. So if a legislator commits to voting how you want them to, you don't need to keep pressing them. If they commit to a yes, just say thank you and drop it, and they'll appreciate you for it. So this is one of the things I had to learn, because I just never learned this until recently. Don't leave without closing the deal. Make sure you get a commitment. Too often, an advocate makes a case with a policymaker who says they agree completely, this is a serious problem, etc., just to find out the policymaker doesn't support the proposal when it comes time to vote. So it is human nature to hear what you want to hear, but advocates need to listen carefully. If you want them to vote yes, ask for their vote. If you want them to fund a program, specifically ask for it. Always, always, always be polite, but endure the silence as you wait for their answer, and make no assumptions. And this is a very important part of advocacy that a lot of people forget about, and it falls to the wayside, and it's not a good thing to do. You have to make sure you follow through. Programs are not even done with when they're implemented. When a bill passes, it has to be implemented. So a lot of times they pass your bill, but did they implement it? A lot of times that answer is no. So you want to make sure that your bill has been implemented. So you want to make sure it's solving the original problem once everything is implemented. And it is very critical to pay attention to everything throughout all the processes. Now, in Connecticut, we have all different committees. So a lot of times it goes through, 3 different or 4 different committees, depending. So you have to keep pushing those committees at times, because there is an even amount on either side. The leadership is even.
And if I could say something too, I've been doing this for 19 years, and I still often don't know the answers that I wish I knew. And our state capitol has all these young, eager interns that are there to answer your questions. So whether it's the legislative library, the Office of Policy Management, and they get paid to do your homework for you. So don't be afraid to call up to the Capitol or call your legislator's aide or the co-chair of the committee. So if it's housing or health or education, call that office and ask them to get the answer to your question. And like I said, more than often than not, they're delighted to be able to do it. They want to be helpful. They want to be busy.
Don't take it personally. I think I just learned this about 3 years ago, maybe. So policymakers have to balance a lot of worthy and competing interests. You won't win every time, and near the end of the legislative session and committee deadlines, pressure builds. Tempers run high. Oh, I've seen it in the little round thing there. It's terrible. They actually fight. And feelings do get hurt, but be gracious. Do not ever burn bridges, and wait for the next opportunity. Like Merrill said, we actually, surprisingly, and I'm in other coalitions for healthcare too, and we also have a Republican champion. So we're really reaching across a lot in Connecticut. So this is a quote. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent, which means what, Kim?
All powerful.
All powerful. Nothing happens overnight. Put your idea out there and tend it. So keep calling your legislators, even like Kim said, Merrill said, during the session, off session, call them. Tell them this is your problem. This is what you want them to do. this is, this is how I live my life, so I need you to do this to change it. Put it in the I statement. Always an I statement. Unless you're speaking for a group, it's always an I statement or me, or we if you're speaking for your spouse. Be flexible. If your proposal won't work, find one that does the same thing. There's often multiple ways to get from point A to point B. And changes can be political, financial, or just personal. Find a way around it. Get creative, repackage it, route it through a different agency or whatever you have to do. So in Connecticut, we had to do this. We had to rewrite a couple of different bills. And we do have a good several champion legislators, and they'll help us with, through the Office of Legislative Research, with what will be acceptable language and what will not be acceptable language.
Right.
So they're always there to help you. You can always reach out.
Can I just add something to that? Like Holly said that we have got some laws passed through and stuff, but I remember one specific law that we wanted to push through, right? And that was if you were on temporary assistance for needy families, and it's called TANF for short, but it's temporary assistance for needy families, right? In order to keep your benefits, you would have to either go to job training or work at least in Connecticut, or work at least 20 hours a week, right, in order to keep your benefits. And so, say I decided to go to, I don't want to work at McDonald's. I don't want to flip burgers. I think I want to go back to school and get my high school diploma. That wasn't allowed. That wasn't an allowable work activity. Are you kidding me? But they would pay for me to go to CNA training, for however many months it is. They would pay for my little stethoscope and my uniform and my books and everything, and then I would intern at a facility or whatever, get hands-on training, and I passed the test, with flying colors. I'm now a certified nurse's assistant, but I don't have a high school diploma. Don't forget that, right? Who's gonna hire me? Now the state paid all this money to put me through this training, right? And so stories like that is what we brought up there. And they finally said, well, yeah, So then they allowed us to either go back to school to get our high school diploma, or go get training, or go get a further education by going to college or whatever. As long as you were doing something, you were able to keep your benefits. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. There's so much more, but that's what I'm gonna say on that. But because like the state, they don't think all the time. These people sit up there at our Capitol, our elected officials, and they make some of the dumbest decisions I've ever heard in my life. I would never say that to their face, But yeah, so that's we really have to point things out to them and say, you spent all this money on this training, and it did me no good. Yep. All right. That's all. We're gonna start wrapping up, right?
No, we have 10 minutes. So clear communications are very important to successful advocacy. And when you go advocate for your policy issue, if you bring 5 or 6 pages, your legislators are not going to want to see all 5 or 6 pages, especially if they're in small print. So the right-sized fact sheet is about 1 page is the perfect amount in larger type, if possible. 2 is usually acceptable. And you want to make sure it has the perfect information, the right arguments, and it's the perfect solution that, so it will get to the right legislators. Sorry, I'm getting a little headache here. So now there's also action alerts. The perfect action alert with all the right information delivered just before the vote will do no good if it's missing the legislators' numbers for advocates to call. A lot of times you really should not only email, but you should always follow up with a phone call as well to make sure that they know this is important to you. Yeah, please.
Okay, we have 8 minutes left, so we want to leave room for questions, but let's see if there's anything. No, I think maybe we will stop and ask if there are any questions, any suggestions. I want to also thank our friends at the Connecticut Health Policy Project and keep the promise for the PowerPoint. Again, we talked about collaboration, and that's what friends are for. I don't think the website votesmart.org is as effective as it used to be, but please know who represents you. Votesmart.org used to do a good job, but if you just go on and Google who are my elected officials and get familiar with them, and you don't even have to have an issue. You could just introduce yourself and say, hi, I live in your district and I just want to say hi. And one of the things that's not talked about enough is doing the math for our elected officials. All too often, we don't think about the high cost of not doing the right thing. When we leave, so I work for an agency that works with families who have children under 18 who are homeless. When you leave a child in poverty, there are so many additional costs. And you have to do the math for them. You have to talk about, you can't have tunnel vision. You have to see broadly. And very often, when you do the math for them, and like I said, I'm no mathematician, I have to get it from somebody else, you can show them that it really makes sense to do what you're asking them to do. We like very, very visual representations of what's going on. A good campaign slogan. We have something, it's a little late now, but we had something called No More Crumbs, that we've been going to the Capitol with fresh bread and the ingredients to bake bread relabeled so that the flour is housing and the oil is health care. And when legislators come by and get a loaf of bread, we say when you take one of the ingredients away, it's not bread anymore. And last year we introduced all we have left is crumbs, because as they keep on cutting food stamps and other programs, people are really, really struggling. So there's a reason that companies spend gazillions of dollars on advertising. Think about what's the slogan that will get people's attention. So we are at time, and I want to thank you for being a wonderful, wonderful audience. Give yourselves a hand. and thank you so much to Holly and Kim for always having my back and being there with me.